If you had the opportunity to travel to another dimension, what would you do? Hi, Spider Moms. Want to watch a movie? So to round out the spooky month of October, I decided that we would look at a movie that truly haunted me as a child. This movie is also one that was requested by Chamo Josie. I'm not confident on that pronunciation. I hope I was kind of close. But I guess this movie is just in the zeitgeist right now when it comes to a haunting experience. And the last time that I watched this, I was in my high school physics class because I'm the product of the American education system. So join me today as we talk about the 2009 classic spooky film, Coraline. This film begins with establishing our protagonist Coraline Jones as she's adjusting to her new life in the Pink Palace apartments. Her family just moved to Oregon from Michigan, so that's quite the life change, I would imagine, and she's not really handling it the best, but her parents are too busy with work to do anything to help her adjust. She decides to go out and explore the area until she stumbles across a black cat and a kid named Wybie. He's the landlady's grandson, and he gives her this rag doll look-alike of herself. And this rag doll causes the entire movie to happen. She takes this doll back home and she's able to find this small door inside of her apartment. And when she discovers it during the day, it has a brick wall in front of it, but that night she sees a bunch of dancing mice and they lead her back to this door and she gets pulled into a portal, and this portal is known as the other world. And this is an alternate universe where Coraline's parents are showering her in affection and attention and really good looking food. And this is a world that Coraline wants to stay in and wants to live in, but she wakes up and leaves the dimension. When she wakes, it's the next day and she's able to go and meet all the other neighbors in her apartment complex. Upstairs is the amazing Babinski, who is a Russian gymnast who owns a mouse circus, and those mice led Coraline to the door the previous night. And then downstairs there are these retired burlesque performers who give Coraline a tea leaf reading and warn her to not go back to the other world. But since she's so happy there, she decides to ignore all of these warnings and go ahead and go back to the other world. And while she's there, she's again showered in this affection and attention. We see that her other father has built this garden that has her head as a bunch of glowing flowers. Then we meet other Wybie, who brings her to the Babinski circus where they can watch the dancing mice perform. And while she's in the other world, she realizes that the cat that she saw in her world can also travel through these dimensions. After this performance, the other mother tells Coraline that she can live here permanently and always have this affection given to her for a price, and that price is for her eyes to be removed and replaced with button eyes, which was just so fun to watch as a child. Oh, what a good visual. And to add to this just fine cinema that's not at all haunting, when Coraline tries to fall asleep to go back to her world, she is unable to. She's trapped in the other world. And then she tries to escape and go through the door to get back to her world, and the other mother becomes this arachnid creature that haunts me to this day. It is just, why did someone have to create that? Who thought that that was something that was going to be just great for audiences to witness? Anyway, the other mother captures Coraline and decides to imprison her in their dimension for trying to escape. And in this other room that Coraline is imprisoned in, we meet 3 ghost children. And one of these ghost children is Wybie's aunt, who we established in the beginning of the film was missing. This aunt reveals to Coraline that the doll that she received in the beginning of the film was actually being used to spy on her from the other mother. And after sewing buttons over the ghost children's eyes, the beldam, who is the other mother, devours their souls. Coraline can free these people if she's able to recover their soul essences, which are trapped in these eyes. And after she says that she'll help them, the other Willoughby comes to the rescue and gets her out of this dimension. However, the other mother had kidnapped Coraline's real world parents, and now Coraline needs to go back to rescue them. This interdimensional cat proposes to Coraline that she can offer a game to the other mother. If Coraline can find her parents and the 3 eyes, then the other mother will let them all go. But if she fails, then she will get her button eyes and be forced to live in that dimension. And the scene that follows is really interesting because as Coraline is finding all of these eyes, we see the world around her just starting to disintegrate. It's visually such a neat scene, and just watching this fantasy world that she created fall apart and turn into this wasteland. It's so cool to watch. And during this scene, we see that Coraline stumbles across a flagpole wearing the other Willoughby's clothes, and we assume that he is dead for helping Coraline escape. And then Coraline stumbles across the ghost of Willoughby's great aunt again, and she tells Coraline that the other mother will not honor their promise. And so what Coraline then does is she tricks the other mother to open the door that leads back to her dimension because she claims that her real parents are behind that door. And then Coraline uses the interdimensional cat as a weapon and throws it at the other mother to stun her so that she can escape with the snow globe that her parents are trapped in. And Coraline narrowly escapes being captured again by the other mother, and as she's closing the door between dimensions, the other mother's hand gets through and it gets caught in the door and severed off. When they're finally home, Coraline breaks the snow globe and frees her parents, but they don't remember anything that has happened lately. But they did finish their work, so they're nice to their daughter. Her mother even goes as far to buy her the gloves that she's always wanted, and they plan a garden party together, so that's something. But not everything can be that peaceful and wrapped up. That night, the ghosts from the other dimension warn Coraline that the other mother is still trying to reach her. Coraline goes to a well that's near her house to dispose of the small key that helps the door open between dimensions, but the severed hand from earlier attacks her, trying to get that key. Not all hope is lost though, because Willoughby, the real one, shows up and smashes the hand with a rock, destroying it. And it seems like everything is going to wrap up peacefully in this movie. The next day, all of the residents in the apartment complex have a garden party together, and it seems good. And as we're closing out this movie, we watch the interdimensional cat walk through a post and go to the other world, and thus ends Coraline. Now, I know that this movie was wildly successful. I'm aware. It came out in 2009 and to this day is still discussed and talked about as a great film. And you know what that means. We gotta look at some numbers now. The budget for this movie was $60 million and it made $124.6 million, which is incredible. I feel like that's such a rewarding thing to see when you're a film director or an artist for particularly a stop motion film, to get that sort of confirmation that the movie you made is incredible and being well received. On IMDb, this movie has a 7.7 out of 10 with 254,000 reviews and a Metascore of 80. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 90% on the tomato meter and a 74% audience score with over 250,000 reviews. This, broadly speaking, was a very well-received film, and audiences liked the charm and whimsy of the stop-motion animation world that was created for them. But on the flip side of that, the huge criticism for this movie is that it's too dark for children, which is fair. I mean, I think it can be a lot for children to imagine that a clone of their mother is going to kidnap them and steal their eyes and make them buttons, but if you make her angry, then she's going to turn into a spider demon. However, I think as an adult watching this, I got a lot more out of this film, and I thought it was a more fascinating journey to go on. Don't get me wrong, that spider mom still scares the shit out of me, but I think that visually it is a very neat world that is being built. This handcrafted adventure is nothing short of just a treat to go on. And to me, there's something that is just so magical about watching stop motion films. Something about the handcrafted nature and the whimsy that is always being built in those films is something that I love to watch. And the animation for this movie is incredibly fluid, and every character has their own sort of unique movement to establish who they are. And this helps develop very clear and strong personalities for these characters, and it's incredible to see the animation and the character work so well together. And using stop motion animation for the whimsy of this movie helped make everything that was happening in this movie and the stakes in it feel that much more real to the people in it. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep monologuing about the design of this movie because I love it so much. I'm going to link a video down below that actually is from the film studio talking about the design, but it is so incredible, every single detail that went into making these puppets. While the world that they build is this fantastical place, it is something that still feels so real. The animation is just something that I love so much, so if you have time to watch the studio talk about animating this movie, check out the link down below. Going off of the design of this movie, I think it works so well with the message of it. This movie explores the theme of that illusion when something is too good to be true and you get blinded by all the good things that you ignore any red flags that may come up. When Coraline first enters the other world, she is so taken aback by the fact that people are treating her with this love, but it turns out that this was just being used as a manipulation tactic to lure her into staying in the other world, this promise that she will always be loved and taken care of. And I think that there is a larger conversation that is brought up with the meaning of this movie, where it is very clear that Coraline's parents do neglect her needs, at least emotionally, and because of that she feels as though she needs to create this fantasy world in order to escape her actual world. And it's such an interesting journey to go on as an adult watching this, because as a kid that went right over my head, but watching it now, it's an interesting journey and an interesting lens to approach this movie with. And I think that showing this message in such a unique way is a fascinating approach to this conversation, where you make it seem so black and white of this is clearly a bad person, the other mother, so Coraline is better off in her real world. But in her real world, she's also not treated the best by her parents, so it's kind of a lose-lose situation that she's been forced into. And something else that I thought was fascinating about this movie was the pronunciation of her name coming up so much. It's Coraline, but a lot of people call her Caroline. You won't see it in this video, but I had to edit out a couple of times where I messed up and said Caroline. And the character that this kind of reminds me of is Ladybird from Lady Bird, where she is so hell-bent on being called Ladybird instead of Christine because that makes her feel like she has some sort of control on the world around her. And I think that's what Coraline does too, where she feels as though she needs to have some control of what's happening in her life. We establish this movie where she is going through this huge life shift, and so I feel like as a kid you want to have control over something, even if it's just how your name is pronounced. And so I think that that is a fascinating aspect to this movie as well, is her name being such a common theme through this film. But I'll leave it there. I'm curious to know what you all think about this film. I hadn't watched it in a while, and so it was fun to revisit and to look at to wrap out this spooky season. And if you made it to the end of the video, dude, thank you so much for watching. Now that we're kind of through the month of October, I'll start focusing more on the other requests that I have going on. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten them. They are there. I will get them. Don't worry. There's a plan somewhere in my head. And lately, I've been playing the new Spider-Man game that came out. It's really fun and really cool and really epic. So these videos are a good way to hold myself accountable that I'm supposed to be doing something. Thank you again to Chamo Josie. That may not be right, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll send a little smooch your way, and I'll see you next time.